Whoa, wait. Are you saying that you could be 7 to 12 minutes faster just by doing that?
Yeah.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
It theoretically could have taken me from like a 3:05 to a 2:55. There's that sub 3 right there.
Yep, you heard that right, 7 to 12 minutes faster. But let's give you some context first. Over the past few years, we're starting to hear from more and more athletes and coaches telling us that carbohydrates are bad or not needed, and that we'll have more running success by reducing them and training our bodies to use fat instead. But whenever I make a video about carbs, I get some full-on comments about how they're the devil, or I'm the devil.
Everything is the devil to you, mama!
But I'm a scientist at heart. I follow the evidence, and I've spoken to more knowledgeable people than me and famous authors on the subject. But it's time to delve deeper, to do some testing. Are carbohydrates really a bad thing, or are they a good thing for your running? I'm determined to find out, and I've found someone to help me. Jonah, how's it going?
Great, Ben. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So if you don't know Jonah yet, then you definitely need to find his Instagram here because it's currently my absolute favorite Instagram page. So thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I think we're going to really help a lot of people. I have a question for you. Why would people go for the low carbohydrate approach? What was the thinking behind it?
Yeah, there is some interesting research and tradition around the low carbohydrate approach to training, especially in endurance athletes. The thought process is that if we train in a low carbohydrate state, that's going to make our body better at utilizing fat for energy versus the carbohydrates. And that will allow that muscle to use more fat and less carbs during the beginning part of a marathon, for example. So at the end of the race, when I need to use that muscle glycogen for that last spurt, it's still there. And that's a really interesting theory. And there is actually some research too that shows that when people do low carbohydrate diet, it potentially could enhance the signal to increase adaptations for endurance running. But then when we actually look at performance, it tends to not actually lead to increases in performance gains.
Okay, I'm having an idea. How would you and me as normal humans, how would we test that?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to go about it. I'm a little bit lucky enough that I have this lab with all this really cool equipment here in New York City.
Yeah, right.
So I think the few different ways we could each test it. For example, for me, what I would do is I would spend a few days eating very little to no carbs. I'm going to try to eat less than 50 grams of carbs a day, for example. Then we're going to essentially go out and run for a few hours at my marathon pace. And then at the end of that 90-minute run, I'm going to test out all the equipment I have, my heart rate, but how much energy it costs me to run my marathon pace to see how efficient I am running. And then a few weeks later, I would do that. But what I would do differently is the days before, I would maintain my normal carbohydrate intake. And then also what I do is 36 hours before my marathon race, I carb load because we know that can improve performance. And then I would test to see how efficient I am again once I complete that 90-minute run after it with all the equipment, just to see how much it improved my performance.
Yes, that sounds disgusting. Is there any way that maybe I could do a slightly watered down version where I didn't have to remove carbohydrates from my diet?
Yeah.
So Jonah was a lot kinder to me because we decided without the proper scientific equipment, we'll do a little bit more of an informal test where I could eat my normal carb diet for a week and then run for 80 minutes on the treadmill, recording my average heart rate for the last 20 and 10 minutes and also record how that feels. Then I'm going to repeat the process the next week, but I'm going to carb load for the 24 hours before the run and see if there's a heart rate and a feel difference. But it was going to be interesting nonetheless based on what Jonah told me.
We actually have research that shows that just carb loading in general, even if we don't do like the extreme carb depletion protocol before, but carb loading in general will improve your performance by 2 to 3% in an event like a marathon, which could be minutes for some people.
And you know what? You don't want to see what I eat every single meal over the 4 days. So what I've decided to do is a cool 80s Rocky style montage. Boom! Starting to regret this life choice. This is test 1, right? So as I understand it, it's an hour at marathon effort, but I'm going to do it on the treadmill because the one thing that I can't control over here is the climate, and it's usually 35, 36 degrees. So I'm going to do it on the treadmill with the air conditioning on so that I know like it's the same both weeks. Heart rate monitor at the ready. Again, I'm going to try and keep testing conditions like the same, like both weeks, same temperature, same shoes. I'm going to wear the Alpha Flies. These are Vapor Flies, not Alpha Flies. I'm going to wear the Vapor Flies for this. An hour on the treadmill at 4 minutes per kilometre, marathon race pace. I don't even think I'm in the condition to be doing this, but at least it will be an honest go, I suppose. In theory, with normal carbs and then super carbs, like carb loading, I should see a difference in my heart rate. I should see a difference or feel a difference in my RPE. That's the theory. What am I doing? 30 minutes down, and actually, so I'm running at about, I think about 4:10, 4:15 per kilometre pace. I feel alright. So this is going to be interesting because I've got to up the speed in 20 seconds. It is feeling hard, I'm feeling control, and the heart rate's doing okay, but yeah, it's feeling pretty hard now. I'm bang on an hour, 4-minute kilometres for the last 20 minutes. Let's see what happens to the heart rate. Last 10 minutes, Jonah Rosner, you are an absolute This is absolutely killing me. Thank you. I just hope that's more enjoyable carb loaded.
And the results were in. For the last 20 minutes of the 80 there, the average heart rate was 160 beats per minute, and the last 10 minutes average was 161 beats per minute, which are both comfortably within zone 2 for me. But the RPE I'd put at around 7.5 or maybe even 8 towards the end out of 10. I did feel a bit weak, but I ploughed on into the next week, eating a normal carbohydrate diet, not loading yet. In fact, I was trying to work out what a carb load even looks like. Here was Jonah's advice.
It makes more sense to do a very short carb load, like 1 to 2 days, but really drastically increase the carbs as much as possible through those days. 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for me, like close to 800 grams of carbs.
How the hell do you get that amount of carbs on board?
My 2 main points would be avoid fibers, so no vegetables. So we want food that has a very high carbohydrate ratio to fiber ratio. So yeah, those things like bagels, rice, pasta, white rice, I would say, and then also liquid carbs.
Okay. And can I just check that you just gave me permission to eat pancakes?
Yeah, pancakes are definitely on the table.
So this is the day really, this is the day of the second test. It's the day of really going hard on the carb loading. One thorn in the side really of this whole project is I can't do it exactly like I did last week because today I go back to work, so that has in itself like different energy requirements. I'm going to try and have bagels through the day. I'm taking like carb drink mix. I'm going to have a good carb lunch. I've actually increased the amount of carbs I've got in my breakfast. Like I've doubled the amount of oats and granola. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm gonna give it my best shot anyway. So I'm back at work. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get as many carbohydrates as I can in liquid form, basically like Jonah recommended. So I'm taking on a few of these bottles, 20, I think there's about 25, 30 grams in each of the bottles, maybe a bit more, so keep plugging away. Just while I'm raw dogging this bagel, can you use that term on that? I'm basically not putting any filling, anything. I'm just literally eating this bagel for the carbohydrate content. I'm also liquid carbing again, so we're using Bix, which is the brand we use, but there are other brands like Tailwind. There's a number of brands. This is basically just the liquid carbohydrate. 2 scoops is going to get me 50 grams of carbs. So bagel and 2 scoops in my water is 50 grams. I'm 50, so that's another 100 grams. Half an hour to go, so just getting a banana and a gel in, like last 2 little bits of carbs. But they need to be easy on the stomach at this point. And last but not least, we're training with a few different types of gels. I'm training with the Mortons, but also these cis beta fuels, because they're 40 grams of carbs in each gel. So I'm now 20 minutes away going for the gel. 40 grams more carbs. The only thing I'm worried about is that I slept really badly last night, and then I've just had my first full day of actual work for 7 weeks, like being back at school. So I'm hoping I'm just not exhausted. Let's go and get changed. Just getting started now, so within 8 minutes of the time that I started last week. I've got the same shoes on. The only thing that's different is obviously wearing a different vest, but everything is pretty much the same, other than the fact that I have eaten considerably more carbs, and I've also got a gel ready to go with me on the treadmill. Pretty sure I said the same thing last week, but right now I'm sitting at about 30 minutes feeling really good. Heart rate's just in the high 140s. Here we go. Time to go with the Morton. 45 minutes in, feeling good. But I want to give it 15 minutes to sink in before that 20-minute effort at the end. 20 seconds, and then we go higher. I'm not going to talk too much, don't want to spike the heart rate. Here we go. And we're done. 18. Okay, well, first feelings, I couldn't see the heart rate by the end because it got a little bit dark in here, but feelings was that felt much more manageable, and I know there's the placebo effect, like I know I'm carb loading, so it should feel easier, but last week I did feel weak come towards an hour. This week, not at all, strong, could keep going, but I'll be interesting to see what the actual heart rate data says, which is what I'm going to find out pretty much straight away. Alright, chilled now. Some interesting results for sure. So as you know, when I did the first test, my average heart rate was 161 for the 20 minutes at the end, and it was 160 for the 10 minutes at the end. On this one, it was 160 for the 20 minutes and 159 for the 10 minutes at the end. So actually, it was only 1 beat per minute different. And if I look back and think, well, what could I have done any better? Here are some things that I'm thinking. It's not hugely different because I do eat quite a lot of carbohydrates anyway. I could have run for a little bit longer and watched that carb depletion take a bit more of a hit. And I could have had a bit of a bigger meal the night before I started carb loading. But what stood out for me actually is it felt a lot easier. The RPE was easier, and I think that's half the battle. But what I would be really interested to find out is what's the difference when Jonah tests between real carb depletion and carb loading. Now that might be a much bigger difference. Dude, that was a bit of a journey, but I'm assuming that your journey was a bit crazier than mine, or I hope it was.
It was definitely not the most fun I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, no, I can imagine you might have had a bit more fun. How did it go for you? Come on, give me all the glory.
It was probably a little more extreme because of what I did. When I went and tested in the lab after I ran for 90 minutes at my marathon pace, I was actually 8% more efficient with the carb load. And so like 8% more efficient for me on a carb load could theoretically translate to 7 to 12 minutes. So a 7 to 12 minute improvement just from carb loading and marathon time is huge. That's like a difference between like a 3:05 marathon for me and like a 2:55, right? Which
that's massive. Wait, you could be, that is massive. 7 to 12 minutes faster.
My heart rate with the carb load at the end was 163, without was 172. So now I'm just at a much harder heart rate training zone, so I just can't sustain that pace. And I was actually burning 2 times more fat without the carb load than with the carb load. And that's important because carbs are actually more efficient source of energy, so I'll be able to hold my marathon pace for longer. So all in all, for me, it was a huge difference, like a 3:05 to 2:55 marathon.
That's madness. And amazing that you had the lab to back that up. Jonah, can I just say thank you so much for going through this and putting yourself through this with me, for the people that we're trying to help.
Things we do for science and for running, you know.
So if you do want to learn more from Jonah, just make sure you check out his Instagram because it is awesome. If you like this video enough, then probably consider subscribing to the channel, but you're definitely also going to like this one, which for the short term is going to be the suggested video, what YouTube thinks you want to watch. And then once I've done some more videos in this category, that will be there. So whichever one it is, enjoy it. See you next Sunday.